Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. We are here today in this last episode of the series, Administer Microsoft Fabric. It's a pleasure for me to be here today with all of you, sharing the stage with my friend Marty. My name is Javier Villegas. I am from Argentina. I work with data for almost 30 years now. I'm Microsoft MVP in the data platform area also since a few years back. And, we are here to close the series here with this super, super nice and interesting topic about Fabric. So, Marty, how are you? How are you doing?
I am great. Javier. It's great to be here with you, presenting for the first time actually with you. Done this a few times with other people, and it's great to be on Learn Live again. So I'll just quick bit about myself. Like Javier, I'm a Microsoft MVP. Started life with SQL Server, and over the last 8 years or so, drifted into Azure space and lately the Fabric space. So really keen to tell people about the administration of Fabric. And Javier will walk through the slides. I'll do the demos. We'll have a little bit of chat like you would in the workspace. See how things go. And how does that sound, Javier?
Well, yeah, good. So, absolutely, the idea is to spend some time together, learn, share, and be nice with each others, and move on with this topic. As I said before, this is the last episode of a series of 9 episodes. Then there is the upcoming one, which is about the exam that we will talk a little bit later on. But yeah, I mean, we have learned a lot during this series. So now with Marty, we will try to make a good closure with this interesting topic. So moving on, today with all of you in the chat is Heidi. She's been with us before moderating. So say hi to Heidi. Be nice with her. She definitely will try to answer all the questions that you may have, right? And the idea is, if we have enough time, then we can, have some of these questions here asked in the chat, and with Marty, we will try to answer them properly, all right? So, same as before, there is a Microsoft Learn chapter, right? In where here you have the link and the QR code, which has the name of this very same episode, Administer Microsoft Fabric. In there, you will have all the points that we will be covering today, as well as the labs, the knowledge check, and everything. These series are mainly targeted for us to learn, but then the goal will also be somehow ready to take the certification exam DP 600, right? So please, after the presentation today, go to this link, right? Have it in your bookmark, as well as all the other modules, right? And definitely make sure that you follow them one by one, and also that you do the labs. I guarantee you that's going to be one of the best things for you to get involved with the Fabric, to get involved with this new technology. Marty, Fabric has been announced not so long ago, right? It was in GA last November during the Ignite conference.
So yeah, that's right, Javier. That's right. Didn't it come out in GA around that conference? Was that November last year? So it's not been GA for even a year yet.
Yeah, it was announced as a preview, or as a public preview, during Build in May. I mean, a year ago, actually, and then in GA in November. And since then, Microsoft is giving us all this material, all this push for us, the community, to keep connecting, learning, and share with others. So this is what we're going to be trying to do today.
Sounds good, Javier. Sounds good.
Great. So we are live in YouTube, so definitely be nice with each other, say hi to each other, and ask all the questions that you have in the chat. All right. Before moving on to the contents, we will, focus on some of the important links that Microsoft is publishing for us, right, with a ton of information, a ton of learning material related to Fabric, right? I would say that one of the most important starting point is this link here, the Fabric Career Hub, right? In there, you will have links to training, to the learning material, to videos, to explain how to start dealing with Fabric. If you are new to Fabric and you would like to start over, well, you saw this before in previous episode that Microsoft is providing to all of us with a 60-day trial, right? In where you have to pay zero, you pay nothing, and you get involved with all the goodness of Microsoft Fabric. So definitely, Fabric Career Hub, right, is one of the most important starting points, right? So there are others MVP, right, which are sharing their experience with Fabric. So definitely, it's a good starting point. Right. Well, in the Fabric Career Hub site, we will also see a little bit of information related to all the roles in a Fabric ecosystem, right? Again, this is the 9th episode. Hopefully, by now, all of you are a little bit more familiar with all the concept, all the terminology, and all the technology within Fabric, like data engineer, data warehouse, data lakes, right? Warehouse pipeline, data flow chain 2, and all of that, right? So in here, in the Fabric Career Hub, we will see, architecture examples. We will see all the specification for a job description of each of the role that we've been presenting till now. Data engineer, data analyst, analyst engineer, data science. But today, we're going to talk about one key role that it wasn't mentioned before, which is the administrator role, right?
And Javier, I think you've just made a really good point there. So up to this point in the series, we've been talking about the development and doing lake houses, doing warehouses, doing pipelines. And I think for the administrator, that's really good background. If we look at a traditional role like the SQL admin or the Power BI admin, traditionally people have come into them roles by having experience of the development environment. So I think even though the last part wasn't maybe dedicated to administration itself, it's a real good background and a real good roots to put down to move into the administrator section.
Absolutely, Mari, and you hit an important point here, because I would say that if you are the role of an administrator, you may need to know, maybe not be an expert on all the other roles, right? But at least have a knowledge of all the components, right? And definitely this training is the best starting point for that, because definitely when you start administering all the components within a Fabric tenant capacity, those terms that we will cover today with Mari, definitely, if you focus, if you have one data engineer or one data analyst or a data scientist that is coming to you with a request to enable features of these kind of things, you definitely need to know what they're talking about, right? So definitely having the overall knowledge of all the roles is an important thing. And for that, in the Fabric Career Hub, you will have definitely a good, documentation to start with. Mhm. All right. As we mentioned here, the idea with all this training that we've been into since the last few days, we are focusing now on the second point of this slide, which is learn together, right? But there are many others training opportunities that Microsoft is providing, right? The Cloud Skill Challenge is one of them. Tell me, Marty, have you checked the Cloud Skills Challenge already?
I did, Javier, I did. I haven't actually sat the exam, but what I did was I went through all the modules. I did all the exercises. They're pretty basic. Each module, I think it's around an hour, maybe no more than an hour and a half. And most of that's made up with an actual exercise that you work through. It's challenging enough to get all the points across,
absolutely,
but it's not too complicated. So I've
but
worked
it
through
gives
that.
you a good sense of what you're trying to accomplish here, right? I mean, it may be a little bit basic at some point, but definitely powerful enough.
Yeah, because I think listening to this series is great, but to things to go in your brain, you need to actually do things and work through it. Just be challenged a little bit, and I think that's a better way to upskill, and it complements this series really well.
Yeah, and here we are in one of the things that we may see within the skill challenge, right? Well, now I believe that is over, or it's going to be a new one soon. But definitely, what gave us the possibility that if we complete the all the modules at the end of this, it will give you with a voucher with a huge discount to take the exam, right? And speaking about the exam, right, one of the other possibilities that we have, as I briefly mentioned before, in few days, there's going to be the final session of this way, which is basically targeting on tips and tricks on how to pass the exam, right? So definitely stay tuned for that session, right, which will be in a few days. I believe we have a slide for that, but there is also a lot of practice test, right? So definitely stay tuned on that, right? And make sure that if you really want to take the certification exam, make sure that you follow the next session and also do the practice exam. And then when you're ready, right, when you believe that you have all the knowledge and some hands-on experience, because all this is new, Marty, right? We just said it has few months in the market, so we won't see a lot of people with years of experience in Microsoft Fabric. But definitely we will see a lot of folks that have a lot of background with Azure Synapse Analytics, Data Factory, and Power BI. And as we see in previous modules, in previous episodes, it's like right now we have all that combined, right? And more easy to use within Fabric. And so definitely stay tuned. And if your objective is to take the exam, make sure that you tune in. And this is the the announcement for the last episode, which will be targeting not on the context of Fabric, right? With the skill within Fabric. We finished today with the last episode, but this one is targeted on how to pass the exam DP 600. You will see that there are a lot of information, tricks, and also a bunch of things that, when I went through this session in the initial wave, I learned a bunch of things that I didn't know, right? So make sure that you tune in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good advice, Javier.
Yeah. So this is the list of all the sessions that we've been through. This is the last one, May 2nd, Administer Fabric. So, Marty, why don't we move on and start delivering the content for this?
I think that's a really good idea, Javier. Just before we do move on, just like to say to our audience that all of these have been recorded and they're all historically available on YouTube. So if you have missed any, just go to the Learn site and you'll find the links there to the past episodes.
Yeah, definitely. Not only this episode, but also the recording of all the previous one. So make sure that you have it in your bookmarks. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's start, Javier. That's great.
All right. So what are we here today for? Right. So let's cover the learning objectives. So we will describe all the Fabric administration tasks. You know, we all been SQL Server administrator in the past, right? So definitely Fabric is not a relational database, but some of the things that the regular administrator, not only a SQL Server, maybe a sysadmin or any other kind of admin, or even if you are coming from, you know, Power BI admins, you may need to, you know, have a knowledge of this administration task, right? We will go through the admin center. We will cover it and see it live, and we're gonna be also taking care of user access. So, you know, as part of the administrator task, security is one of them, definitely, right? So super important to cover. So we will cover this in few minutes. All right. So how do we start, Marty? If we need to start from scratch, I have no idea where to start from. These are
it's a big subject, isn't it, Javier? And there are a few administrator portals here. We'll see some in the demos. I guess the Power BI, well, I say the Power BI portal, it's actually the Fabric administrator portal, but it's very similar.
It has turned from Power BI administrator to Fabric administrator, right?
Yeah.
It's evolved like the technology, right? So now Power BI is part of Fabric, as we've been seeing in all these episodes. So definitely, you know, it's an evolution of the Power BI admin role.
That's right. So, one of the experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope that by now everybody knows what an experience is. Right? So very good. All right. So I'm gonna be the Fabric administrator, right? So for my company, let's say, right? So how do we start with? Well, first of all, we need to have a Microsoft 365 account. If we would like to start getting into the trial, right, and we are not part of a big organization, and we would like just to do our setup to get involved with the technology, these are the 3 steps that you have to follow. Open your Microsoft 365 development account, right? Here you have the link and also the QR code, right? As soon as you have that account created and ready, you have to sign up for Power BI, right? So you have the link here. And then when you have that ready, you're going to do the switch to activate within Power BI Microsoft Fabric. And with that, you will have the 60 days trial in where you will be able to do everything that you have learned till now. All right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the idea is that later on we will see, you know, when we have all this created, how to deal with the administrator part. So this is a little bit what we will be covering, right? So basically, administering Fabric involves a lot of tasks that are essential, ensuring that everybody has, you know, all the rights and they are effective to use the Fabric platform within your organization or your own, let's say, live. As a Fabric admin, you will have to know a lot actually about the Fabric architecture, the roles as we described before, also about security, not only for the data, but also for the components and maybe a little bit more for the network, and also have some knowledge of governance, right? Governance is something extremely important within Fabric. So it's one of the topics that we will be covering today. Also, right, we need to know about how to do the deployment and also how to handle the licensing, right? Licensing and cost control in this case, and capacity control to make sure that you have, enough compute power for you and your organization to move on, right? So one of the things that we have to be super familiar at the end of this session is the admin portal, right? And all the administrative tools within Fabric. And with that, we're going to configure the environment that will, make sure that it's ready for our organization, right? Definitely, the admins have to work closely with the business user, with the data analysis, with the IT professional, and also make sure that, their objectives, what they are trying to accomplish, then, and also the company, you're going to able to provide it by your administrator role, right? So by the end of the module, the idea is that you will have an understanding of all the tasks required by the role. All right. So let's try to go a little bit deeper on the overall Fabric architecture, right? We've seen till now, right, all the previous models, as I said, the architecture that we have within Fabric. Data warehousing, data engineering, data ingestion with pipelines and data flows into data science, real-time analytics to be able to process, store, and work with events, and also business intelligence, right? As we've seen, and actually one of the best comparisons that I like of all this, Fabric ecosystem is that, when we compare Microsoft Fabric, right, the solution for data analytics with Office 365, right? For productivity, we know Microsoft or Office 365 with Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Before those were kind of separated applications, and now they are all together under the umbrella of Office 365. And if we continue with the comparison in Office 365, we have OneDrive, in where we store and we share with all the applications the files between them. And in Fabric, now we have Data Factory component, Synapse Analytics for warehouse, lakehouse, real-time analytics, etc., and Power BI. And the common layer of storage is OneLake, right? We have seen before, and we talk a lot here about Delta Lake, Parquet, the open storage system that now Microsoft has implemented within Fabric. So that is super important, right?
It is, Javier. It's a huge component.
Absolutely. And definitely, as Fabric administrator, we need to have a good understanding of all the components, right?
Absolutely.
So one of the important things, Marty, which actually is the one that I like the most, is that Microsoft Fabric is a SaaS solution, right? When we said SaaS, that means that you don't even have to install a single virtual machine. You don't have to download any software, any ISO file, and install in multiple machines, right? You have all you need from within the Fabric portal. So you can start your data project for analytics in a matter of seconds without having to install anything. And actually, for free, right? Remember, before, Marty, we came from years ago, right? We had to start buying the servers, the software doing the installation, the network, the authentication, all that kind of things. And now we just sign in with an account and we're ready to start working with our data project, right? That is great.
It is. It is.
So the next slide, I would say, is the most important one of the one that we're going to be covering today, right?
We will.
This is basically all the components of our Fabric environment. We will start with the top level, which is the tenant, right? We will also cover capacity, right? Domains, workspace, and items. I would say that we have covered most of them, right? Starting from the latest one, items and workspace in all the previous models, right? For sure, by now, you know how to create a workspace, how to create an item within the workspace that could be any artifact like a lakehouse, a warehouse, a pipeline, right? So, in few words, right, a Fabric tenant is a dedicated space for your organization to create, store, and manage all the Fabric items. There is often a single instance of Fabric for an organization. So let's say if you are in a big organization, you will only have one tenant, right? And within the tenant, we will see what we can do, right? But a tenant is one per company normally. And most of the time, well, I would say always is aligned with your Azure Active Directory or your Entra ID, right? The Fabric tenants map everything to your one leg from the top level following the hierarchy, right? So tenant is our umbrella. And from there, we're going to start deploying all what we need. So the second point, which is actually super important as well, is the capacity, right? Which is basically the compute, the horsepower for your Fabric environment, right? So the capacity basically are all the resources that are available for you and all your users to be used, right? So within a tenant, you can have one or more capacity, right? When you buy a capacity from Microsoft, we will see that then we can create multiple smallest one from that point onward, right? So definitely, if you need your computer power, right, capacity is what you have to take a look from, right? And as everything in the cloud era, this is super scalable, right? So if you need to scale up your Fabric solution, your capacity, you can do it within few clicks, right? So we will try to get within the Fabric administration to see if maybe we are running low on processing power, and eventually we need to scale up our capacity, and eventually also scale it down if we don't need to use those resources, right? So Fabric offers capacity to Fabric SKUs, right? We will see then that there are multiple what they call capacity from F1 to F2000, right? That is the amount of compute power that you have for your Fabric solution.
Yep, and we'll take a look at that, Javier, very shortly. I was just looking at the chat there. There's a couple of questions coming in about capacity. I'll cover that in a minute when we go into the demo. I'll just let Javier finish, and we'll be straight into the details of the capacity.
Yeah, the idea is now we will cover this in the slide, and then Marty will definitely show to all of you live on a demo what we're talking about, right? So we talk about tenant, this single umbrella for our organization, then capacity, compute powers, and then we have domains, right? The best description for a domain to me is like a logical grouping of workspaces, right? Oh, something happened to my PowerPoint. Here we are.
Yeah.
So
more of a
it's a
governance
grouping
feature, a limited governance feature to like group things together under a particular label.
For example, if within your data analytic project you have different areas of your company, right? Let's say HR, finance, production, sales, you can group them by domains, and with that you can make them to see the resources or the items and workspace that they have permission to, right? So let's call domains like a logical grouping of workspace and items, right? So workspace is something that we started on probably the first episode talking about and showing to you multiple times how to create a workspace. So basically is a collection of items that we will put together within a single tenant, right? And with that, for example, if we are starting a brand new project and depending on how we organize the project, right, we can put together all the resources for a project, or even if we have, in some cases, the medallion architecture, right, in where we have bronze, silver, and layer, we can eventually, if our projects require that, we can use one, workspace for each of them, right? Or, if we have multiple environments like production, pre-production, development, test, UAT, we can also group the workspaces like that. And for example, if this is a POC, a proof of concept, right? When we are done with that, we just delete the workspace. And with that, all the items that we have within the workspace will be deleted as well. And also it's a good, starting point for resource usage, right? We can monitor the resource usage per workspace. So we know that this specific workspace is using this or that amount of, computing power. And with that, we can take decisions to, see if we need to scale up or eventually scale down the capacity. And finally, the items. And with the items are all the ones that we've seen till now. Data warehouses, layhouses, pipeline, data sets, reports, dashboard, and everything that we have seen till now. Something important that I would like to also recommend to all of you is to stay tuned to the roadmap Fabric page, right? Microsoft has released Fabric, but it's not like a static solution. Every month, there are new additions for all the things that we have within Fabric, right? So there are many, many things coming, some of them in public preview, and then they land as general available, right? But there is a web page where Microsoft is announcing all those things that they are planning, and also they are specifying in which, when we should be expecting those features. And with that, we can start getting ready, right? So stay tuned to the roadmap page, right? You can, put it in your browser and search for Fabric roadmap, and definitely you will get it at the top, right? So the main concept then: tenant, capacity, domain, workspace, and item, right? So we just create the developer account, we enable Power BI, we switch to Fabric, and now we have the concept well described here. So, Marty, why don't you show us all of this with your demo?
I will indeed, Javier. I will indeed. Thanks for that great introduction. So, right at the moment, I've had my tenant set up. I'm not going to show setting the tenant up. the links that Javier provided, we can go to them. We set the tenants up, and then we're into the Fabric start screen, and that's what we see in front of us at the moment. So when I started and when I hear other people feedback, they're like, what do I do now? So I was curious myself. So let's dive into all those things. Javier talked about the tenants, the capacity, the domain, and the workspace. So I've already got the tenant. The other things are best explained really by talking about the workspace. So I was curious when I first started this. So I went into the Power BI experience, and I was like, oh, okay, so I'll set up a workspace. Let's go to new workspace. Now, you've probably seen similar things to this before, and let's call this, I would just call it Learn Live New. Name for the workspace, simple one to set up. Now, I've already created some domains here. We'll see how to create these later when we dive into the admin portal, but I've created a few domains here. So let's just pick our wildlife domain. We're going to build a dashboard about wildlife. Okay, and what do I need to pick for my capacity? So I've got some options already here. I can pick a trial. I'm not going to pick a trial because, like I said, I was curious when we started off what would happen if I just picked Power BI Pro. So most people on this call are probably familiar with Power BI Pro. And yeah, I want to create a dashboard, and I'm curious, can I do some other things there? So let's apply that, and we'll create our workspace. I'm straight into my workspace. I'm like, okay, what should I do now? Okay, so I'll try to create maybe something else, not a Power BI dashboard. Maybe I'll want to go into my data factory experience and see if I can create something there. So I'll go new pipeline. And I get a pop-up telling me, well, you've just basically made a Power BI workspace. In order to do other things like a pipeline or a Gen 2 data flow or a lakehouse, I'm going to need some sort of capacity. So what am I going to do? I could upgrade to a trial if I wanted to. So let's have a look at that. I could have pressed the upgrade button there. I won't. What I'll do, I'll go back into my workspace settings, and I'll go back to my workspace settings that we've just seen. And I'll click on the premium icon. And what I want to do is choose a new capacity. So ideally, I'd choose trial there. Now, trial will give me the capacity for a trial, but I don't want to do that. What I want to do is create my own capacity. So how exactly would I do that? So it's a couple of ways. We can dive straight into the Azure portal, or we can go to the admin settings. And over here, we'll see capacity settings.
So Martin, the admin portal is one of the things that we will be covering, and as one of the most important things for the Fabric administrator, right? So make sure that we know how to read. Can you show me again how you got into the admin portal?
Yes, certainly can. Certainly can. So we'll see up in the top right-hand corner, we've got a lot of buttons, and we'll see the cog. So if I click on the cog, I'll obviously get a pop-out. And there's a whole load of things I can go to in here. But down the bottom here, under governance and insights, is the admin portal. So I just clicked on that, and that throws me into the Fabric admin portal. And once in the admin portal, obviously there's a lot of things I can do. Tenant settings is one, but here I've chose capacity settings, and under capacity settings, I've picked Fabric capacity. Now, we can actually see I've already created 2 capacities, and both of these are now paused. But what if I wanted to create a new one? Well, I need to be fired into the Azure portal. I just basically log on, and I'm thrown straight into the screen where I can create a brand new Fabric capacity. So let's be quick about doing this. We don't want to hang around too long. I'll just pick a resource group that I've already got set up. I'll give the capacity a name. I'll call it Learn Live LL New Capacity. Got to have a bit of a naming convention there. I think you can only use lowercase. I'm actually in Australia, so I want to have that in Australia East. And here, I'm going to create what's called an F64 capacity. Now, the capacities go up from like F2, F4, F8. all the way to, I think, about 2048, which is a very, very large capacity and probably meant for real big enterprises. F64, that's kind of, well, it is comparable to Power BI Premium. You can still set up a Power BI Premium capacity if you choose to do so. But over time, the F SKUs, as it were, will probably take over that, that capacity. We can set the capacity admin, and that's essentially all we have to do. We can set some tags, we review and create, which I'm doing, and I just click create. Now, hopefully this won't take too long. It's very quick. It'll throw us into the traditional screen where, you know, we provisioned an Azure resource and we're waiting for it to get provisioned. Hopefully this will be done very quickly. It's yeah, it's one of those things where when people are watching, maybe they take a bit longer than they normally do. But there you go. It's now finished. Yeah. So we can go to resource.
Yeah, it's super quick. Yeah,
it is super quick. We can go to resource, and there you see another test. I'm going to use this resource in a minute, but we can pause this or we can delete it. We got it set up now, so I'm going to use it. So let's go back to our Power BI admin portal.
So it's important to mention, Marty, that eventually, if you are not using the capacity, you have the possibility to pause it. So this way, you won't be paying for compute, right? While it's paused.
Yes, you do. You do indeed. So, I mean, I guess that's one of the things people used to do in Synapse and things like that. So let's just go back into my workspaces. And pick my LL new, which we were looking at. And we'll go back to the workspace settings. We'll choose premium again. And this time we'll look at our capacities. And we see that this time I do have capacity open to me. So I can pick that capacity. And down here, I'll pick that capacity I've just set up there.
That's the one that you just created. Yeah.
Yeah, that is the one I've just created in the portal. Now, if those other two capacities I had were active, I could choose from the net, but they're not active, so I don't get the option to do that. And I'll just apply that. And that's our capacity all set up, Javier. So
you have configured your workspace and you assign the capacity that you just created just for that specific workspace, right?
I have indeed. And I could have, like you were saying before, I could have created a domain. I could have put a domain in.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you, Marty, but there is a very good question in the chat window, right? Which they are asking, can I create a workspace without a domain? That's an interesting question.
Yes, you can indeed. Let's have a look at that. Let's go to our workspaces. Let's go to new workspace and let's see if we can do that. So I'll just call this non-domain workspace. When I can spell. Now let's go and click advanced and click down. We'll do a trial this time. And our domains here. So our domain here, yeah, we can certainly pick none. We can pick none, or we can see our domains there.
Yeah, it's just to help you on doing the logical, separation of duties, separation of tasks. But if eventually you don't need to do this logical, grouping, is fine, and you just would using domains. But it's a new concept that was not present before in Power BI. So definitely important to mention. And well, it was a super good question in the chat.
It was a great question. And just quickly before I hand back to you, Javier, if you wanted to set up a domain, you flick right back into the admin portal. You click on domains, and you can just click new domain over here. You can set up a new domain, and yeah, I spelled that wrong, but yep, and we're in a new domain. So that's basically all the things that you just talked about there, the tenant, the workspace, the capacity. I'll hand back to you, Javier, and let you continue with the slides.
All right. Thank you so much, Marty. Definitely, we have covered everything that we have seen till now. So it's good. It's good to see this in action. Right. So going back to the slides. I believe we have to. Okay. Yeah. Here we go. So from now on, we will try to explain and have a global overview of the Fabric administrator role, right? Which as we've been seeing till now, there are a lot of tasks and responsibilities associated to the Fabric administrator role. And one of the most common questions that we have is, I was the Power BI administrator in my P capacity before, in my premium capacity before. Is it exactly the same if we go or when we go to Fabric? Because as you all know, Power BI is now part of Fabric. And I would say uh, some part of the responsibilities definitely are in common, but now there are many more, right? Because Fabric is way bigger than just Power BI. So absolutely more more administrative related task, right? So one of the most important thing that every Fabric administrator have to take care is the security and access control, right? It's definitely one of the most important aspect of the Fabric administration, right? So managing security, access control to ensure that only the authorized users can access sensitive data, right, is key here, right? I would say security is one of the most important thing, not only in Fabric, for everything, especially nowadays, and especially now that we have to deal with data, right? So we have all the role-based access control to define who can view the data, who can edit content, who can set up, for example, a data gateway, right? If eventually we need to go get data from our on-premise environment. And of course, everything related to security is tied to Azure Active Directory or Entra, as Microsoft call it now, right? Another important task is data governance, right? An effective Fabric administration requires a solid understanding of governance, right? You should definitely know how to secure inbound and inbound connectivity to your tenant and how to monitor the usage and performance for those metrics, right? You should also know how to apply data governance policy to ensure that your data within your tenant is only accessible but the people who really needs to, right? And then customization and configuration. We will see that there are many caveats for the configuration of a Fabric environment, right? Because it's definitely involves customization and configuration to the platform to meet the needs of your organization, right? We talk about data engineer, we talk about data analyst, right? And report writers. So definitely, each of them will need their own customization for that, right? This can also include setting up private links to secure your tenant to get access from other clouds, right? You know that because we covered it before in previous episode, that you can set up shortcuts to get data from another network, from AWS, from Google Cloud, and you set up those shortcuts, right? But in order for you to get access to the third-party cloud, right, you need to have the knowledge and being able to configure the private link to secure your tenant, right? And then super important, monitoring and optimization, right? As a Fabric admin, you should know how to monitor the performance, the usage of the platform, and optimize the resource, right? To, for example, cost control, right? That's super important. Also, a key point here is being able to do troubleshooting, right? So when things go well, it's super easy, but when we have to start digging deeper and do troubleshooting, definitely we have to be ready for, right? So in summary, the most important tasks of the Fabric administrators are security and access control, right? Data governance, customization and configuration, and finally, monitoring and optimization, right? I would say that pretty much I cover the overall topics that every single Fabric administrator should have. All right. Fabric have the settings, or what we call the administrator portal. I was trying to come up with a comparison with SQL, but I haven't found one. Even if we're talking about Azure, is also quite unique. This Fabric admin portal, right? Marty showed to us how to get access to the admin portal, right? In his demo, and he was able just to map a workspace to a specific capacity, right? But beside what he did, there are many other things that need to be configured through the admin portal in order to have our environment ready for what is needed, right? One of the things that I'd like to mention, which maybe is a little bit outside the scope, is that when there are new features, right, coming in Fabric, right, as public preview, by default, you won't see them. You may need to get into the admin portal and enable it manually, right? So all the new things that are coming, you will see in parentheses preview, and most of the time they are disabled by default. So you just enable them, and later on you will see it.
That's a really good point, Javier. As well as that, for new preview features.
Say again, sorry?
As well as turning new preview features on, and there are a lot of settings in there that you have to say, do you want to enable this for the entire organization? Yes. Or do you want to enable this for just a group of people? Or do you not want to enable this feature at all? So you've got quite a lot of control around who does what in there. And that's kind of a general theme for a lot of settings in the admin portal.
Not only for the new features, right? You can even select a security group in where they can only create Fabric items, but only them, right? Or you can specify the whole organization, right? I believe you're going to show to us later on one of those in an example, right? But for most of the things that we have here, excuse me, we will have the option to enable for the entire organization, right? Or for a specific security group, right? All right. So as most of us may be coming from the Power BI world, right? We will see a little bit familiar with, but definitely many more options to follow here. And when we have our Power BI premium tenant or capacity, right? For example, as you showed us before, maybe we don't see any Fabric component, or you get this message that you have to switch to a Fabric capacity, right? By default, when you are working with your Power BI tenant, you may have to manually go and enable Fabric, right? Otherwise, you won't see the different experiences or personas, as Microsoft called them, or happy path. I believe it's also another term that I heard about it, right? But yes, from the admin portal, we will control mostly everything, right? Well, PowerShell CMD LEDs, right? For everything related to administration, luckily I'm a lover of PowerShell, right? For everything related to SQL, as well as for many aspects of Azure infrastructure, I use PowerShell a lot. And definitely being able to have the CMD LEDs in order to interact with our tenant, with our capacity, with our workspace, and everything within Fabric is something that I value a lot, right? So working with PowerShell in your favorite environment, probably within Power Automate, or if you are some sort of on-premise person, you work in your computer with Visual Studio Code, you can interact with your Fabric environment using PowerShell, right? Same as PowerShell, there are admin APIs and SDK, right? So for every task related to administration, we will have an API that we can call, right? And get, the result and use it for everything. It could be to build another report for example, resource usage, or maybe cost, or maybe how the capacity is in terms of, if we need to scale up, or if the tenant is, if the capacity is paused, right? Everything that we can do programmatically from the admin portal for every single task, there is an admin API that we're going to be able to call from outside. Right? So this is a really good thing. I've been able to do it not only from the portal, but also programmatically with either PowerShell or APIs. And of course, the admin monitoring workspace, right? There's going to be a dedicated admin workspace in where we have predefined reports, which seems to like Power BI reports, but I mean, indeed, there are Power BI reports, but the data source is basically, the guts of our Fabric environment. And with that, we're going to get for each workspace the resource usage, the consumption, the capacity usage, the number of items, etc., etc., etc. And with that, we're gonna be able to, besides monitoring the workspace, we're gonna be able to take decisions, right? Are we using our Fabric capacity properly? Do we have enough power? Do we have maybe period of time in where we have a lot of things scheduled at the same time, so we are saturating the capacity, so maybe we have to split over the time those tasks so we take advantage of the resource in a wiser way? So those are all the questions that we're going to be able to answer by getting the admin monitoring workspace, right? So this is a must have. I mean, you're going to have it definitely for there, right? But you must be able to read and understand what you get here in order to administer your environment properly. Mari, would you like to add something else?
No. I'm going to have a look at the admin portal. I'll have a look at turning the Fabric on as well, and I'll look at a few other settings as well, like the endorsements and sensitivity labels. If you just carry on with your slides, I'll dive into a demo very soon.
Good. So we covered the tasks. So one of the tasks, as we said, is to manage the Fabric security, right? Super important, as I show you before, the most important slide in the presentation where we describe all the components, tenant, capacity, domain, workspace, and items. I would say this is the second most important slide in the presentation, because here you have all the layers related to security, right? even if it is a SaaS solution, you must be able to have control over your network and make sure that you apply the proper control and security, right? Super important. Another level is being able to set up the permission for workspace and items or artifacts by the access control, right? Once you have that under, your scope, you also have to take care of data security and access control, right? Because at the core of all that is your data in Fabric. So we definitely do not want to expose that data, right, outside the people that should really use it, right? And as Marty mentioned before, we're going to be seeing some techniques and some, areas in where we're going to strengthen on that data security part, right?
Yeah,
But
and I think the graphic that you're showing there at the moment, Javier, I think it demonstrates that defense in depth paradigm with the layers, the circles that you see there, the security around each layer. So if each layer gets breached, you've got to get through the next one. I think that's a really important concept to get over, the defense in depth paradigm.
Absolutely, yeah. So definitely security should be at the top of our list. Mhm. All right. We should also be able to assign and manage licenses, right? The license control and the functionality will definitely be responsible of every single Fabric administrator, because we have to ensure that the license user have the necessary access to the data, right, and the analytics to perform their role effectively, right? So if we don't do that properly, definitely we're going to have a lot of complaints, right? Being able to handle the licenses is an important thing, and believe me, it's not easy, but it's going to allow the administrator to monitor and control the cost, right, which is super important nowadays, by ensuring that the licenses are allocated efficiently and only to the users who need it, right? This can definitely help to prevent unnecessary expenses at the end of the month and ensure that the organization is using the resources effectively, right? So having the appropriate procedures in place to assign and manage license will help to control access to the data, right, and ensure compliance and regulation to optimize cost, right? So there is a whole section related to security. We have seen some of the links before, so definitely make sure that you are familiar with the whole licensing and security part, right? All right, so when we come up with a data set, with a lakehouse, with any data related item, right, we have to make sure that we can distribute and share the context properly, right? One of the key things that we have seen in previous episodes, that in Fabric the idea is not to duplicate data, right? We have the data in one lake, and then we can share it and we can distribute it without data copying. So we won't be duplicating the data as maybe on an old solution, right? Where, let's say that we are the data analyst, and then, the data engineers are requesting to have the data to do another things related to maybe machine learning, right? We have to copy the data to them. Now we're going to have a single copy of the data, and every single area will be able to work on it properly without data copying. So being able to share it is a key thing, and another responsibility of us, the administrator, right? And also data governance, right? In Fabric is super important, and this is one of the things that we will cover really deeply from now on, right? So there are some built-in features to manage the this. So one of the most important thing to me, at least as a starting point, and then Marty will show it to us live, is endorsement of Fabric content, right? So let's say that we come up with our data set with the Power BI report, right? And we are at UAT level, so users that are owner of the workspace will be able to promote the item, right? And then the Fabric administration will be able to certify that promotion. With that, if we are, let's say, doing any data discovery within our Fabric environment, if we see that an item, or which could be, of course, a data set is being promoted, right? We know that, maybe it's not super ready, but at least the people or the developers that are working with that are certainly that they are ready to move on to the next step. And when we are 100% sure, we're going to do the certification. Marty will show us, as I said, how to do that, right? And super important to trust on the data that we are working on, right?
Yeah.
So two things, endorsement and promotion, right? Here, you will have more detailed information on how to do it properly, how to promote, and how to certify the content of your Fabric environment, right? Okay. As on every single data analytics solution, we're going to have sensitive data. And with that, we definitely need to take certain actions, maybe, any kind of restrictions or something like that. Definitely, there are methodology within Fabric to do metadata scanning, right? So this way we can go and check for this sensitive data, and as I said, take the necessary action, right? There are, everything that is related to this activity is also available through APIs, so we can do it not only internally from Fabric, but also from outside. So metadata scanning is definitely a key topic. If you want to learn more, here you have the link and the QR code that will land you to the learning module, right? To make sure that you get all this information. And also track the data lineage, right? On every single project, it's important not only to have the data items within your workspace, but it's going to be important for us to know the lineage, the dependency within all these components. And to do that, from every single workspace, at the top right level, there is the lineage view, in where we can see all the components of our workspace, in this case, or our data solution, definitely how they are correlated one to each other. So we know, which report is grabbing data from which lake or from which semantic model, and from where the data that is feeding those models are coming from. So it's a really nice view to have all the lineage here in one single point of glass, right? So super, super nice to see. Probably, Marty, you will show it to us later. But, it's definitely something which is nice to have, and definitely will help you to understand more the inside of your project, right? And licensing, as we mentioned before, capacity, it may have it cost, because it's the compute power, right? It can go from an F2 to an F2048. That's the amount of processing power, let's say, right? And again, if you don't need that capacity all the time, you can eventually pause it, right? And you won't be paying when it's paused, right? Then there is another component, which is the storage, that even if the capacity is paused, you always have to pay for the storage, right? Then there are other Fabric licenses related costs, like, for example, networking, right? How the data move from different Azure regions, if you are transferring data from region to region. And then you have the individual license, right? The free, the pro, and the premium, quite similar to what we have before in Power BI. So Marty, why don't you show to all the audience what we have learned so far?
I certainly will, Javier, and thanks a lot for that. So I'm basically at the Fabric home screen at the moment. That should pop up very soon. And one of the things we talked about was some of the settings in the admin portal. So let me just very quickly dive into the admin portal. And you did say about turning Fabric items on. So we can turn these on for the entire organization. Now, I have mine turned on for the entire organization. I've already done that. You have the choice of doing that. And you can either turn it on for specific groups, or you can exclude specific groups. And that theme kind of follows through for lots of the settings in here. You can turn them on for the entire organization or for a specific set of users. And you'll also see that in the admin portal, quite a lot of the things in here are under preview. So do have a look at those, especially in the Microsoft Fabric section up the top. But let's flick back over to our homepage, and let's just look at something Javier mentioned with the admin workspace. Now, initially, when I first seen this, I went into my workspaces and I was looking. You can see here I've got multiple workspaces already created. I was looking in here, where's the admin workspace? And it's actually above the My Workspace. So My Workspace, as hopefully everyone knows, it's just specific to you. You can't share it. You can experiment in there. But right above there, we have the admin monitoring workspace. And we flick into there and we can see a data set, or as they're now called, semantic models. So there's 2 semantic models and there's 2 reports. So let's just go in and have a look at one of these reports, feature usage and adoption. We click into there and it loads, and you can see various metrics about the workspaces I've chosen, about the capacities we can see here, and the various workspaces I've got down the bottom. Not going to dwell on this too much, but we can we can set other things up in here and monitor whatever we like. Additionally, on top of this, we can monitor with log analytics through the Azure portal. Probably a bit more an advanced topic, but we have the option of doing that. So what were some of the other things that Javier talked about? Because I'm kind of aware of time a little bit at the moment. So one of the things we did talk about was endorsements. So let's have a look at one of my workspaces where I know I've got things endorsed. So let's go into this Learn Dataflow Gen 2 workspace over here. And you can see in the endorsement section over here, some of my items are certified and some are promoted. What's the difference? Well, some people might be used to this from Power BI. When we've created an artifact, and it doesn't have to be a report or a data set, it can be any artifact, a pipeline, a data flow, a lakehouse. We can either we can promote it. So pretty much anyone can promote an artifact. And basically what you're saying there is, I believe this is kind of in a good state and you might want to certify it. Now, the next stage to that would be kind of organizational specific, if you like. Maybe a committee would look at something and say, you know, this conforms to our standard. We'd like everyone in the organization to use this pipeline to do whatever it needs to do, or we'd like everyone in the organization to use this report or this data set. So let's certify it. So let's see how you would do that. You click on this, the three dots, and you'll go down to settings. And you'll see here you've got endorsements and discovery. So initially it would be none, and you'd click promoted. Now, certified probably wouldn't be visible. Well, it would be grayed out for the majority of people. And that's because only certain people will get the privilege to certify an item. And that's something you have to switch on in another place within the admin portal. So, for example, Javier might have created a report and he might have said, oh, I want to promote it. So he's promoted it. And then it's gone through like an organizational conversation. And then they've come to the admin and they said, Javier's created a promoted data set. We've decided to certify it. Can you certify it for us? And that admin, maybe me, would come in here and go, yeah, okay, I'm going to certify that. And you know what? I'm going to make that discoverable to the entire organization. And I'd make that discoverable. So endorsement is kind of a bit of a governance feature to indicate that certain reports, pipelines, whatever artifacts are to be used or by the organization or can be promoted through a particular process. So that's that. Now let's have a look at another thing, which is sensitivity labels. And I see a couple of questions about this in the chat. So let's go to one of our workspaces again. Let's go to the Learn Gen 2 dataset. And let's click on maybe an item. Let's click on this data pipeline. So we'll click on the pipeline. And the pipeline will open up. Now we can see at the top there, we've got our certified icon, which is to do with the endorsements. But over here, we've got a drop down, and that's our sensitivity label. So the sensitivity labels are set up within the Purview admin portal, and we'll just have a brief look at that very shortly. But you can see here, you can drop down the dialog box, and there's a bunch of labels that are already created. I've actually created this one, Learn Live Sensitive. So let's put this as a Learn Live Sensitive, and that's all there is to it. So that's great. Endorsements and sensitivity labels. Very quickly, before I hand back to Javier, where would you go to set up those sensitivity labels? So if we go over to the office.com and you're an admin, you would click on the admin link and you'd be thrown into the Office admin portal. From the Office admin portal, you would show all, and you come down and you click on compliance, and that would throw you into the Purview admin portal. So there are a lot of admin portals here to get familiar with. Yeah, there are a lot of them. So now we're in the Purview admin portal. Obviously, we could have gone here straight away if we'd have had the link. And we need to come down to compliance. So I need to find, no, it's not compliance, it's information protection. So we click on information protection and we come down to labels. And I'm not going to go through the wizard that's here, but this is where we set up the label. We go through a wizard saying who can use the label. Do we use it by default? You're probably familiar with these. You've seen them in emails. Confidential, not confidential, to be used by the organization. Pretty similar concept. And the story across the ecosystem with these sensitivity labels is coming along quite nicely. So I'm definitely aware of time. I think we've got about 10 minutes left, Javier. So I will hand back to you and we'll start wrapping up.
All right. Thank you, Marty. Okay, so definitely, Marty, we have learned a lot today, right? Definitely various concepts that we will do the summary at the end of the presentation. But now is time to check what the audience has learned today, right? So we're going to have a couple of questions. I believe that you are all familiar with this procedure. We will go to the questions, and we will allow you to vote through the link or the QR code. So the first question, Mari, is which of the following statements best describe the concept of capacity in Fabric? And we have three options.
It's a good point now. So I guess we'll give our audience time to answer. But one of the exam tips that I like to say here is, like, occasionally you might say, read the first answer. Like, here's capacity refers to a dedicated space for organizations to create, store, and manage a Fabric item. And you might think straight away, oh, that's the right answer, and tick it off without reading the other options that follow. And I think that's something people want to avoid, even if you think it's the right answer, because it might vary by a couple of words from one of the other answers. And one of the other answers might be more correct. So I think a good tip is to actually say, I'm going to spend, a few seconds on each question, regardless if I think it's straightforward. I'm going to read all the answers, and then I'm going to respond. So let's have a look how that's going, Javier.
All right. So it's time to vote. We have three options. A, capacity refers to a dedicated space for organizations to create, store, and manage Fabric items. B, capacity defines the availability of a resource to perform an activity or to produce output. Or C, capacity is a collection of items that are logically grouped together. Right? So
we've got a few ones for two. Sorry, a few ones who voted for one, and most people have voted for the second one. So
okay, let's see the right answer. And yes, is the option B. Capacity defines the ability of a resource to perform activity or to produce output. So,
fabulous.
Final question. Which of the following statement is true about the difference between promotion and certification in Fabric? And the options are A, promotion and certification both allows any workspace member to endorse content. B, promotion requires a higher level of permissions than certification. Or C, certification must be enabled in the tenant by the admin, while promotion can be done by any workspace member, right? So it's time to vote. Take your time, read the options carefully, right?
Let's give this a couple of minutes, Javier. I think maybe the slides, the YouTube slide is a bit behind what you're saying. Yeah, I can see it on the slide at the moment. So yeah, what I just demoed this a minute ago, so hopefully it's fresh in people's mind.
We saw this actually. We saw this just a few minutes ago.
We did indeed.
All right.
So promotion and certification.
Actually, all the answers in the polls are correct, and the right answer is C. Certification must be enabled in the tenant, but by the admin. Of course, it's one of our most important tasks, while promotion can be done by any workspace member.
And it's good to know that everyone who voted got that right.
Yeah, 100%.
100% there, Javier. So people obviously took that in. Great stuff.
All right. So wrapping up, right? In summary, what we learned today are basically all the Fabric administrative related tasks, right? We navigated through the admin center, super key for all the tasks that a Fabric admin must be able to do. And we have some sense of managing user access, right? super important things that we cover in order to move on with the proper administration. Once again, follow up the link, the QR code, to get direct access to the Learn module, right? And you will have there everything that we have seen so far. So you have it there. So please use it properly. We don't have any other session to announce because it's the last of the series, or at least in this wave 2. But as we mentioned, we have the exam session coming up in few days, right? Once again, there is a big discount, and also you will learn a lot and prepare yourself for the exam, right? So follow the link here. And as a final slide, definitely, if you want to try Fabric, this is the way to go. Follow this link and you will have all the steps in order for you, as just a data enthusiast or a data professional, or if you are in a big organization, to start playing around with the Fabric. This is the way to go. You can do it for 60 days, totally free. So you get a sense of what can be achieved with Fabric. All right. We just come to the end. Yep. You want to add something, Martin?
No. Well, I guess just in the last 2 minutes we've got left, I just want to say I hope people have enjoyed the series, and good luck with the exam. I hope to see people on social media have passed the exam. And I'd just like to say thanks for viewing and goodbye. And over to you to say your farewells, Javier.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, everybody, for allowing us to stay here today. It was a pleasure, Martin, to share the stage virtually with you. And well, as you said, really looking forward to see you all moving on with the exam. So thank you so much. Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See you later.